Hi, I'm Andrew Lindy, board member from the After School Arts program, and today I'm here to introduce an exciting new opportunity from ASAP, which will allow you to become a game designer of your very own video game. A select few of you will be chosen by our judges to have your game developed by professionals and shared with the world. Now, a lot of words used and techniques described for this program may be new or intimidating, but don't give up. We've created the following video to help you better understand the game design process. Remember that in the end, it's your idea and your prototyping that really counts. There are many ways to accomplish this, and whether you're an educator, a parent, or a student, please don't hesitate to reach out to us and we'll do our best to help set you up for success. This is a new program, and just like you, we are always learning and trying to improve, and your feedback helps us do that. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce one of our amazing judges and committee members, Mackie, who will be taking you through some of the important elements of the video game design process.
Video game designers go through many work cycles before they're ever ready to fully build their game. No idea ever starts out perfect, and as you build parts of your game and see how players interact with your game, you learn a lot about what you should change. So, in order for you to become a video game designer yourself, it's important to learn what a video game design cycle can look like, and we're going to get into the details of each step, but for right now, let's just do an overview. So first, you'll check what requirements you may have to follow for the game you're going to make. You'll then brainstorm and write down all of your ideas of what your game could be like. Choose your best ideas and write down your plan for the game in a design document. You'll make a rough draft of your game, which is called a prototype, based on your design document. And then you'll ask people to play your prototype so you can find out what you might need to change. With the new things you've learned from watching people play your game, you'll start a new cycle and start making the changes you need to make your game better. And you'll keep going through cycles like this until your game is done. So, the first step, checking requirements. Sometimes the requirements will come from outside sources like rules for a competition or a deadline given to you by a customer. Sometimes the requirements will come from the inside or from your team. So how much programming do you know? Or what tools do you have access to? Now, it's important for you to know the requirements and keep them in mind throughout the cycle, throughout the process, because you want to make sure you don't waste time thinking or making something that you can't actually use for the game you're using now. So for example, if a professional game designer knows they have 2 days to make a game, they're not going to make Fortnite because that took a whole team years to make. If it's a game designer who's in a competition and they learn that the game could only last for 10 minutes, well, you're not going to make Minecraft because that game takes a lot longer than 10 minutes to play. Now, once you know the requirements, you're then going to brainstorm as many ideas as you can. You're going to figure out a specific plan later. So for right now, just write down all the ideas you have, and it's fine if the ideas don't quite work together. But keep in mind that you're making a game for someone else to play. So think about what experience you want that player to have. Before your brainstorm is done though, there are 3 important things you will have to have before you can do anything else. First would be your game mechanics, which are how players will make things happen in the game. Examples of this would be pressing a button to jump, or jumping on a cake to get extra health, or jumping on fire and losing health. Now, a game can have many mechanics, but it's important for you to think of the main ones you're going to need so you can actually finish a level. The second thing you're going to have are game goals, which are what your player needs to do to succeed in the game. Super Mario would be an example in that you always have the goal of trying to get to the other side of the screen. There's other small goals like jumping over an enemy or jumping onto an enemy, catching a mushroom, things like that. But usually these are to feed a main goal, which is to get to the other side of the screen, and that main goal is what you have to keep in mind. Now, the third thing you're going to have is called a main game loop. These are the main actions the player are going to do over and over again, using the mechanics of the game to complete the goals that they have in the game. Looking at Super Mario again, you use the mechanics of walking, running, and jumping to complete the goal of getting on the other side of the screen. There are other loops, catching a star to become invincible and running through things, catching coins to get an extra life, but you have to do the main game loop to finish the game. So while you do need, stars are great and coins are great, they're not the main game loop because you don't have to do that. So you have to think about what your main thing that the player will have to do. Because if that main game loop is fun, that means the players are going to be having fun for most of the game. After your brainstorm, you're going to need to write down a plan for what your game's going to be like, which is called your design document. This is just going to have all the information about what you need to make your game. So your game mechanics, your game goals, your main game loop. But it's also going to include anything else you might have thought of. So maybe what the art would look like or what the level design would look like. And as you test things out and try out new things, you're going to want to make changes to this document, but that's fine. It's just important that you have a written plan now so you don't forget what your plan was for every little thing as you go through different cycles. Writing things down also helps you notice when there's something you're missing or some ideas that just don't work together. It's also useful and really important, not just useful, important when you are working with a team because it lets everybody know what their pieces are because they can see it and everybody's agreed on what they're all going to build together. Now, once you have this design document, you're going to make a rough draft of the game so you can actually have players try out your game. This is called a prototype. It's important to make a prototype because programming a full game takes a lot of work. So, because we learn new things about what we might want to change as we see people play it and as we play it ourselves, it's better to make a small test for that idea and just try it out before putting all the time it takes to put that idea into a fully programmed game. Now, a basic version of prototyping would be just drawing something and then having pieces of paper to act as the objects in the game. If you look at the image here, you can see that it looks like a game that anyone can play. The player would just tap on the screen or the keyboard and you would move the pieces around like it would in the actual game. You can even, attach a stick to the main character so it can move without you blocking, putting your hands in front of the player's face as they're trying to see what's going on. Now, if you look at this other image, you can even test full level design with a paper prototype as well. Just tape pieces of paper together and just sort of move it along as they go through the game. Your first prototype is going to be focused on the main game loop. You need to check that the main thing that they're going to do is it makes sense and it's going to be fun. And players are not that great at explaining why things don't seem to be working right. So if you have other things built in at the same time, it's hard for you to tell what went wrong exactly. So just start with your main core loop, main game loop. Later on, you can, in other design cycles, you can try out new ideas in your new prototypes and do different types of tests. Speaking of tests, like we said before, the best way to know if your game is working is to have someone play it. Now, to test how a specific idea works, something that you put into your game, you're going to need to plan on how to get information on that. So this planned test is called a play-test, and it's one of the most important things you can do as a game designer. So what you're going to do is you're going to write down what you need to learn about your game. Does this mechanic work? Do players understand this mechanic? Do they understand what the game goal is? Are they having fun? Things like that. And you're going to write one question to get an answer for that. Now, you're not going to write down the question in a way that gives a hint to what the answer is supposed to be. So, for example, you don't ask, do you know that you need coins to finish this level? Instead, you ask, what are the coins for? You get a lot better information when there's no hints to what the answer might be. So you'll pick a few of those questions and then you'll start your playtest. You'll have players play your paper prototype like it's an actual real game. Now, in the beginning, you won't ask any of your questions yet. You'll just explain, the basic buttons and then let them play it. If they ever get stuck on something that's related to your question, then you'll ask the question. Or if they never get stuck, you'll just ask it at the very end. If they get stuck on something that you didn't make a question for, then you'll just write down what they had a problem with and explain to them what they need to know to keep playing the game. Later on, you'll have to figure out how you're going to deal with that issue. Now, normally a video game designer would playtest with at least 5 people when they're trying out some new idea, but with coronavirus, it means they can't do that, which means you shouldn't do that. So for now, just playtest with who you live with and be safe. Once you've looked at what you've learned from your playtest, you're going to start the whole cycle all over again. You're going to think about your requirements, make sure you remember what they are. You're going to brainstorm solutions to any of the problems you found and maybe come up with some new ideas. You're going to decide what changes you want to put into your game and write that down in your design document. You'll then put those changes in your prototype, and then you'll playtest that new prototype and see what you learn from that. And you'll keep doing this until the game seems to work. The game will never be perfect, but you can at least make sure that any big problems you found are fixed. You make sure that players understand how to use the game once it's in front of them, and you can make sure that most people seem to be having fun. Now, game designers will usually start making a digital prototype pretty early on. We're not expecting this from you for the competition because you're not working with a programmer immediately or anything like that. But if you want to learn programming and want to try a digital prototype, there is a good introduction program called Scratch, which is online, it's free, and it's basically a simple version of coding, and you drag and drop a lot of like puzzle pieces to make the code work. And it has a lot of online tutorials and examples and a lot of space to play around and practice, and it helps you understand the logic behind the programming that your programmers could be doing. Game designing is fun. It's also pretty hard, and it takes a lot of practice. Even professional paid game developers will still make mistakes. They'll still have to change ideas they thought would work, and sometimes they have to start a whole new game because the idea that they thought would work just didn't work at all. It's why the game design cycle repeats itself. It's why we do playtesting. We as video game designers are expecting that we're gonna find out that we have to change something every single game, every single time. And so if things are not going exactly like you planned, don't worry, that just means you're becoming a video game designer. So good luck and have fun designing your very own video games.
Thanks so much, Mackie, for that great video. We realize that these concepts may be brand new to some of you, but that's okay. If you're feeling confused by some of these game design steps, we're here to help, and we've also provided additional resources so that you can investigate further if you'd like to learn more. We hope that this video helped you on your journey to designing your game, and we look forward to checking out all of your amazing ideas.